All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA DFS video. Have you guys covered here with an interesting 6-game slate. It is going to start, or maybe 7-game, but it is going to start at 6:30 today. The biggest piece of news that we got today is looking at the Boston Celtics. Right now, we know that Jaylen Brown's going to be out, Al Horford's going to be out, and Kristaps Porzingis is going to be out. We also have Spy potentially. So that doesn't matter. So we're looking at a lot of chalk for Boston, especially in a good matchup against Utah. We'll start there. What are your initial thoughts for the Boston chalk that we are getting today?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I mean, as long as Cornette starts, I think he's probably one of your better value plays on the slate. Only has center eligibility, 4,400 on FanDuel, 4K over on DK. It's a good matchup, too. We're seeing a tight spread here because the Celtics are thin on a back-to-back. So plenty of reason to go there. And then, yeah, last night, I was telling you before, I did not like that Sam Hauser was going to be over
Yeah.
40%.
Yeah.
They did have Jaylen Brown and Horford in that game, though. It was a much wider spread. He shot very well. So tonight I'm going to go there. I don't know, man. I was off a lot of the ugly chalk that I thought was going to be ugly chalk last night and all hit. So tonight I'm kind of hesitant to get away from some of these spots. I mean, these teams are just so thin, and a lot of these games
Yeah.
with wide spreads have been more competitive than we expect them to be. So I don't know. I like Cornette. I like Hauser. Obviously, White and Tatum, and even Drew look fine here as well. But those two for value are very, very clear top plays tonight.
Yeah. Looking at Sam Hauser, I did not realize 8 for 12. You're kind of right. Everything else was kind of ugly. I mean, a block and 2 steals, but like only 2 rebounds. Like I mean, just shot the basketball well. So he
Yeah.
does have some bust potential today. I will say, like, if he doesn't shoot the basketball as well today, it wouldn't be shocking to see him bust. But that being said, like Luke Cornett, data wise, is really popping up as a great value. So it's going to be tough to avoid him. But yeah,
Yep.
to your point, I think Drew's fine. I probably going to end up on like 3 Celtics players, especially given the projected minutes that we have. I mean, uh, you know, Tatum at 37, White at 35, Drew at 35. I mean, that's all appealing to me. But what about O'Shea? Like, he is someone that kind of is a point per minute producer, having projected to get 17.5 minutes. Um, yeah, it's a good, I shouldn't say good value play, but it's a cheap value play that could end up working out, especially against Utah, which is okay for a matchup.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit tricky. I mean, earlier in the season, there were a few slates like this with Porzingis and Hartford out where we'd be on Brissett.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most of those games where he actually performed well in were against smaller teams.
Mm-hmm.
Tonight they're taking on Utah. They're still a little bit banged up. Obviously, they
Yep.
traded away Olynyk, but Kessler is healthy. Collins is going to be in there. They've been going to Semitic in the front court a little bit as well. So they're
Yep.
actually pretty big. So I'm not that confident in Brissett. And the other thing, too, is they did scoop Xavier Tillman at the deadline. He's not a guy who's been really heavy in the rotation, but he could maybe cut into some of those Brissett minutes. We were seeing
Mm-hmm.
Brissett playing some small ball five. I don't know that we get that here. Naimus Kate is also healthy. So I like Cornette, assuming he starts, and I do want to really emphasize that we
Yeah.
want him to start here if we go there. Last night, Freeman Liberty, we talked all stream about him, but then when he wasn't starting, he was definitely going to be overowned. So it
Yep.
was wise to get off him in that spot. But I feel similarly here. If Cornette's starting, I think you kind of have to go there. Brissett, Tillman, Cada, they all give me some pause. Really can't
Yeah.
see myself getting there with any sort of volume or aggression.
That's fair. You did mention Utah here, who Boston's going against, and so Utah is without Taylor Hendricks and Laurie Markkinen. But yeah, to your point, they also got rid of Kelly Olynyk, so we are seeing a little bit of different rotations than we've seen in the majority of the season thus far for them. Walker Kessler, I'm really shocked by his projected minutes, but at the same time, it's not shocking. It's just weird that he's not getting more, only projected to get 25 minutes. So he becomes a tough play. You got John Collins, who's probably correctly priced, but projected to get 32 minutes. The one player that I like the most is actually Keontae George as price tag. I just think he's a good kind of leverage play. But are you getting to anyone here with Laurie Markkinen out for the Jazz?
I mean, I like a lot of different stuff here. I don't know if there's one play that necessarily stands out over the
Yeah.
others. I think Collins is probably the safest at his price. Been playing a ton of minutes. All the guards look good, and when I say all, I mean the three of George,
Yeah.
Sexton,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Clarkson. Probably leaving Chris Dunn out of that unless he ends up starting again, which I don't expect he will. But all three of those guys have been solid. They're all priced about where they should be. So, like you said, I mean, it's a good leverage point to go to George because he's probably going to be a little bit lower owned. But I
Mhm.
think you could kind of mix and match any of those three and feel okay about it. I do want to talk about Sensabaugh a little bit.
Yeah.
When he first started, I wasn't there, but I did get to get the chance to watch some of these Jazz games over the past week or so. Really talented player. Does a lot when he's on the floor. Shoots the ball well. He can space the floor, take threes, and we've also seen him kind of crashing the boards at times. So not a player I really was excited about coming into the season, but now, I mean, with all these guys out for Utah, he's probably going to start, probably going to play enough minutes that he's a decent value play here as well at kind of lower ownership. So I don't mind Sensabaugh. My favorite's probably Collins, but I'm with you. I think all the guards are good, and I'm probably in agreement that George would be my favorite in terms of point per dollar.
Yeah, it feels like just everyone's really worried about the matchup with Boston, but at the same time, Boston is sitting, three of their starters here, so or
Mhm.
three players that get a decent amount of minutes for them. So maybe not as bad of a matchup, but at the same time, it feels like a little bit too much of an over evaluation of the matchup. But
Yeah.
one game matchup wise that I want to talk about, and we kind of got a question about Memphis already. We'll start with them. So Memphis is extremely banged up as they have been the whole second half of the season pretty much. I don't even want to go through the whole list of players that are listed out, but it's basically everyone that's played minutes for them. So looking at the projected minutes that we have, shockingly, we do have one player over 31 minutes, Aldama, but he's at 6K. Do you see anyone else here that is popping up for you? And then to answer the question here, are you getting to any Dijon? And I'm not going to try to butcher his last name.
I think it's Giroud. It sounds French. I'll get to him in a second. Yeah, so I don't mind Aldama. Kennard's probably going to start at point guard. He
Mhm.
just hasn't been very good in that role this
No.
season. So if we were to suddenly see Jordan Goodwin starting at the point, I'd probably get to some Goodwin. But where these guys are priced right now, the one play I'm actually pretty interested in is Jake LaRavia. Again, kind of similar to Sensabaugh, not a player I expected to be really high on. But given the opportunity, he's looked great. I mean, another guy who kind of does a lot of different things, still reasonably priced, playing enough minutes with a high enough fantasy point per minute rate that he's someone I'd be considering a pretty low ownership. I
Real
love the
quick on
matchup
that.
here as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was so tilted. I think it was the Portland game, or I don't know, whatever game, maybe Minnesota, one of the games. I was like really on him prior to everyone getting there, and he sucked. And then like it just tilted me so bad that I hadn't played him as much as I probably should have been lately.
Yeah,
And so
man.
like, oh, he's a tilting player to me. I didn't want to hear you
Yeah,
say that. Is my point. So,
I mean, it's a funny thing too, and I mean, Hauser's been like this for me, and Grady Dick too. Like
mhm,
I've been on them when they're lower owned, and they stink.
yep,
Last night there's chalk. I try to get away from it, and they absolutely go off. The thing is, he is low owned here, so like if you want to get over the field, you're mass multi entering. I mean, you could get him in 10% of your lineups. And actually, that's probably matching the field, maybe 20, and that's a pretty aggressive stand. But like I don't know, man. I just like what he does on the floor. And like I said, Kennard hasn't been great. I mean, Laravia does actually kind of handle the ball a lot. He can
he's
find
looked good.
assists. Yeah. And like I said, I'm surprisingly impressed by him. And again, we like this matchup. So I think Aldam is fine, who you mentioned.
Mhm.
Conchar, maybe the second favorite play
Yeah,
here, but he's been really bad, like shooting terribly. But I do think the minutes are there for him. So I want to like more of Memphis. It's just these guys aren't
yeah.
very good basketball players, generally speaking. Like I
Mhm.
said, if Goodwin were to suddenly start to have interest in him, otherwise it's mostly just going to be Laravia and maybe a little bit of Aldama for me.
Yeah, and so no, I mean Dijon, like we're not getting to him really at all, right? It's
Uh,
kind of a fun player that's popping up a little bit here, but like we're not playing him. I mean, he could get randomly more minutes, but we're just expecting it to be more Luke Kennard, right?
yeah, the thing was, Goodwin was out last game.
Hmm.
Um, if Goodwin's ruled out, then maybe you could go to Giroux as like a
Yeah,
last piece in. I'm surprised our model has him for no ownership. I feel like this is the type of player that people try to play coming off a good game, but
right.
both sides
Totally.
did price him up a lot. And I think that's what's keeping things down. So
Yeah.
if Goodwin gets ruled out, or we suddenly see Giroux starting for some reason, he isn't on 10-day. Maybe they want to see what they have with him. Then fine. Otherwise, it's probably too risky, even with the short bench that Memphis has right now.
I will say, just with Memphis and just in general, later on in the season, like plays like that where they might come in like minimum priced, they're kind of worth taking a look at in certain spots. Like obviously, this is not it, but like
Yeah, if he
just
wasn't priced up, I'd like it. Like it's
yeah,
just both sites got him or floating around 5K after one good game. So it's
yeah,
like,
exactly. Um, so let's see here. The other side of this game I want to touch on as well because it's been kind of nice having in a weird way, having Holmes out, having Gafford not there, and having Bagley out, Washington's been playing pretty well recently. So I don't know. Do you like Kyle Kuzma here, who's kind of chalk? Jordan Poole's been playing well. Koulibaly's been decent. I mean, I can make a lot of excuses here, and it seems like everyone else is as well to get to Washington. Where are you at with
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I mean, I love Kuzma and Denny. Those are the two I'm trying to get to aggressively if I can. I know they're the most expensive on the team, but I
Mhm.
think they're really tough to get away from. We've talked about this every stream that Kuzma started at center, but
Yeah,
both he and Denny see massive uptick in their rebounding when there is no other center in there. And it's funny, Kuzma's usage kind of goes up, but Denny's
yeah,
actually crashing the boards even more aggressively, which is good to see. So both these guys, I think, have increased upside. And again, we kind of talked about this with, I think, Charlotte and Detroit last night. Like, these are bad teams. A lot of the time, you can't play these guys because they're in tougher matchups. But when
mhm.
you get two of them against each other, it's usually great for DFS. So a spot like this where we have the Wizards and Grizzlies, all decent offensive players, pretty bad on defense.
Yeah,
This is a game I definitely want to get to. And Denny and Kuz are definitely going to be kind of borderline core plays for me. I don't mind Poole. I don't mind Jones. Kispert, if he starts, is interesting. Definitely has a high ceiling, but a low floor, scoring dependent. But really, that front court of Denny and Kuzma is very,
mhm.
very appealing. Like, I'm gonna probably have them in my main lineups, even both of them in the same lineup.
I know we have Thuggin in here asking about top Yahoo. He's actually one of the better Yahoo value plays as well. Corey Kispert, that is 17.7 for a value rating.
Ooh,
Very cheap
nice.
there. So just want to call that out. But I'm kind of with the field at 33% ownership on Corey Kispert, which actually coming out of my mouth sounds crazy. I don't know. Are you okay with that ownership? Because it does, now that I'm like thinking about it, and it does feel a little bit high.
I mean, if he's starting, yes. We've kind of seen that he's going to play over 30 minutes when he is
Mhm.
in the starting lineup, and then it's kind of a crapshoot when he's not. So, again, this is one of the early games. We should have this news. It is 30 minutes after lock, but I
Mhm.
expect we have that starting lineup. And as long as he starts, I think around 5K, he's fine. Again, scoring dependent, but you're kind of chasing that upside. He is a small forward, which is one of the thinner positions to fill. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then two other spots that I want to touch on as well, just because we have kind of significant players being out. We got Alfred Sengun. I believe today the news came out that he's out for the year. I mean, right?
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate, but that's going to open
Sucks.
up, yeah, that's going to open up a ton of usage for. To me, I think it's going to go in a weird way too, like Jalen Green a lot. Again, that sounds weird, but he's probably the player that I want to get to the most. But we're paying for it as well. 7.8, 7.2. No one has a problem with that on FanDuel, it seems like, coming in at 46% owned. But where are you at with Houston? Because on FanDuel specifically, they are all a little bit too cheap for sure, but they are pulling in a lot of ownership. And then vice versa for DraftKings, kind of a little bit more expensive, kind of a little bit lower owned. So there's kind of risk reward on both sites there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I will call out Eamon Thompson first and foremost, just because he's only 4,900 on DK.
Yeah.
He's almost 8K on FanDuel. So go ahead and play a lot of Eamon Thompson over on DK. I think he's a really solid play here. Probably going to play between 26 and 30 minutes. My favorite's Van Fleet. I mean, he is popular, but he does it all. He's going to play close to 40 minutes. I'm with you. I think Jalen Green's another guy who's going to benefit. So Dylan Brooks is the play today that I see as chalk and I want to get away from. So for me yesterday, admittedly, and like we always celebrate our wins, we just talk about the losses too. I mean, Grady Dick and Sam Hauser were Dylan Brooks yesterday, today, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. He's
Kind of.
pushing 40%. And there's games where he doesn't shoot the
Yes.
basketball. Like there's games where Grady Dick goes over. There's games where Hauser doesn't have any usage when he's on the floor with Tatum and Brown. So for me today, game theory says I probably shouldn't play Dylan Brooks. I mean,
Yeah.
after dealing with yesterday, where all the chalk I didn't love ended up hitting,
Yeah.
like I have a little bit of PTSD, for lack of a better term. But I don't know, man. I'm gonna try to get away from Dylan Brooks. He is cheap. He does have upside. He's gonna play 30 minutes. He should even see more rebounds with Sengun out. Definitely gonna have to do more ball handling. But again, it's just if he's the most popular player here, I'd love to get on other pieces. And then Jabari Smith to me is surprisingly low owned.
Yeah.
He's a guy with Sengun you think would see increased rebounding, kind of similar to what we're seeing in Washington. Maybe they start Jeff Green at center. Maybe it's Jock Landale. You could go to either of those guys, but I think Jabari is probably the one who's going to benefit the most. He's actually been producing pretty well. He is expensive, especially on FanDuel,
Mhm.
but I'm shocked by how low owned he is compared to some of the other Houston guys. So in tournaments, I'm probably going to make a point to get to some Jabari Smith and less Dylan Brooks. I will say in cash games, similar to what I said last night the model loves Dylan Brooks. Or does it though? I
It,
mean,
it it's
yeah, it
weird.
does.
The OF index is terrible though for him. At the same time, the value is extreme. I
He's just yeah. I mean, it's the same as last night. It's like in tournaments you don't play a play like this. In cash games, low risk, you just do. Um,
man, I might say differently. I don't know. Like I feel like we can get the same production out of other plays around that price tag from Dylan Brooks. So, like in cash,
yeah,
because I think he's a volatile play, I might not play him in cash because I think I can get the same production out of someone that's cheaper. So, if he does not have a good day, that is huge leverage that you are gaining on people in cash, and
yeah,
you're probably helping yourself cash there. And like Dylan Brooks, to me, I don't know, like I kind of disagree with it not being the same as like yesterday. Like Sam Hauser was very cheap in comparison. Like
yeah.
he
He's
was
even
probably going
cheaper.
to hit value. Like Dylan Brooks could not hit value today. I know he's been playing somewhat well recently. I don't know. I have a tough time getting to the chalk on this one. I just do. I was
Yeah,
looking at the per 36 production. Like he doesn't benefit that much with Sangoon off the court. And we only am projected for 31 minutes. So like if it was 36 minutes, I'd be like, yeah, sure, that's great chalk. But 31 minutes, it's tough for me to get there. It really is.
yeah, man. And I'm with you. He played 36 against the Spurs the last time these teams
Mhm.
faced and only put up 10 fantasy points too. Obviously, no Sengun is a big difference, but I'm with you, man. And like I said, I mean, I was already off some even cheaper plays last night that were
Mhm.
popular because I didn't know that they'd see consistent usage. And
Yeah.
we have another one right here with Dylan Brooks. So I don't know. For me, he's mostly a fade.
Yeah.
I get it. I get why the model likes it. Um, but yeah, I mean, we talk about how you really just refine your process throughout the season. These are plays we should be fading for the most part. And there are nights where they're going to hit, but I don't know. If Dylan Brooks kills me, Dylan
Yeah.
Brooks kills me.
Think about the nights where we bet on Dylan Brooks. They have been kind of the exact same situation as this, except for he wasn't chalked. So like we're like, yeah, he's a good play. He's a great leverage play. Where it was like Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green being chalked. Now it's kind of the exact opposite. I would just rather get to more Jalen Green. But to your point, I like the Jabari Smith call. I think that's great, especially on DraftKings 6.6. Like, how is he not like a cash play tonight? I know we got some questions about Wemby, and we'll get into the Spurs here pretty much right now. But like, is it just the matchup with the Spurs? Are people scared about that? I don't really get why Jabari Smith is not a little bit higher, and why is he not the chalk? I guess for Houston today, I'm kind of scratching my head by that one.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused by it too. I think a big part of it is that those. Actually, no. I was going to say that the Wizards guys are power forwards, but they're not even. So, like,
Yeah,
yeah, I can't wrap my head around it. The other thing too, Cam Whitmore is also out, which kind of
yeah,
helps some of
yeah.
these guys. I really like Jabari Smith. I think he's too low owned, and he's consistently put up numbers, which is more than you can say for Dylan Brooks.
Yeah. So let's get into some of the Spurs questions, and then we'll jump back into some more as those come in. But we got Wemby question. We also got a Zach Collins question. So first and foremost, do those two correlate together or not correlate together? I mean, are you okay playing both of them or not? Because Zach Collins played limited minutes last game, and he did pretty well. Now
Yeah,
Wemby, we got to worry about him sitting on the back end of a back to back as well. So Wemby is really cheap. I would say if he plays today, like I would imagine he'd be chalked, but like also is his will his minutes be limited? So we have to worry about both of that. So let's get your thoughts on those two bigs
I like Wemby. He's very expensive. It's tough to really get all the way up if you're paying all the way up tonight, unless
on
you're going to
FanDuel
some.
or both.
Yeah, I mean, you can. It's just like I don't know. Like, there's not a ton of dirt cheap value I'm loving. I mean, yes, we like Cornette and Hauser, but they're up around the 4K range. I mean, we're going to talk about Giannis and Sabonis
Yeah,
later. Like, they're not much more expensive than Wemby. They're actually cheaper than Wemby. Or I know Sabonis is on FanDuel,
yeah,
so I like him here. It is a great matchup. You always have to worry a little bit with Pop in the minutes. This is a back to back.
yeah,
He's been playing in back to back, still consistently playing 30 a night. So as long as he's starting, as long as he's in there, as long as we don't get word that he's going to have his minutes monitored or something like that, I do like him a lot as a tournament play. With Collins, I know they both performed well last game.
mhm,
I don't know that I'd bank on that here, especially against a small Houston Rockets team. I know the Warriors have been getting Jackson Davis involved more. Playing Draymond at the five, I think they did want to have big lineups out there more often than not. I don't know that they need to do that here against Houston. Again, trying to read Pop's mind is definitely a
mhm.
fool's errand, but I'm not confident that he gets enough run here if Wemby's in tonight. So I like Wemby a lot. The other spur I'll probably be pretty heavy on is actually Jeremy Sochan. He's been playing better
Yeah,
lately. And it's weird too. You get that guard forward eligibility on FanDuel. You play him either forward spot on DK. Definitely helps with flexibility. Probably a little too cheap. Vassell's fine, playing kind of banged up.
Yeah.
Trey Jones taking a step back. So, yeah, it's really Wemby for me, and then Sochan. Probably wouldn't get to Collins against a small Houston Rockets team, though.
Mhm. Um, and then let's see here. So, playing a 2-game turbo slate on DraftKings. Um, is Alexander a must play or is Washington plays better? That might be too much of a question for me to answer off the top of my head. I have to I have to think
I
about
mean,
that.
Turbo's tough. Like, if you fade a stud and they go off, you're not going to win.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I try to build around them. Obviously, you have less value because you're only plucking between two games. But yeah, I don't play a ton of turbo slates if
Yeah.
I'm being honest. But the ownership spikes, like you got to think about those nights where we only have 2 or 3 games. Like if you miss out on the stud, you lose, or if you play him and he does, you lose. So you're pretty much determining your night. I don't think there's a right answer. But SGA's been awesome. I'd say on DK where he's only 10-5, I'd probably just play him. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the other spot where we know that we are kind of definitively getting news is actually going to be Philly. So we know that Max is going to be back tonight, and he should soak up just a massive amount of usage tonight. And he's not coming in owned at all. And I think that might just be the matchup with New York. But I actually kind of like stacking him and Harris together, which sounds ugly. And you're probably like, what the heck? But
Obviously.
yeah.
Yeah.
But Harris, he's like not the guy anymore. Like he just can't step up and be the guy, but he's a good complementary player. So this is definitely an ownership take. But if they're coming in at 1% owned, I'm okay getting there. Like I could see Maxey going for 50. I could see Harris going for 40. And I think they coexist together in that way. Like I wouldn't want to play them separately tonight.
Yeah,
Is
that's a
that
lot.
is that crazy?
I mean, you're allotting like 15K plus to a game with a 208 total, and it's going to be
Yes.
very low paced against a good defense. But the ownership's so damn low that I don't think you're insane to do it. I will say this. I mean, I'm probably not going to get to much Philly tonight. Maxey's coming off an injury, which is always a little bit
Yeah,
concerning. Not a good matchup with the Knicks, and the Knicks defense is going to be even better now that OG's back. OG's
that's
back
true.
on the other side there. I can maybe get to Oubre just knowing that if he gets really hot, he could spike his ceiling, and he's cheaper than those other two, so that could really help you. But
Yeah.
I don't think you're crazy to play a play with upside at 1 or 2%
Yeah.
owned, though. It's just I don't know. It's not something I'd be excited about.
Yeah.
208 is a very low total, especially in 2024.
Yeah, that's it is, and it was New York, right? That just when had like a 77-74 game, right? Or was
Yeah,
it
I think
them?
so.
And yeah, so that was pretty ugly. But with that, let's go ahead and get into the position by position breakdown. I should call out that we are waiting on a lot of news for the Clippers and also Minnesota. That's going to be difficult to break down right now without us not having those news. I mean, do you have any indication of that stuff at all, like for the Clippers or for Minnesota? Because right now we have all the players for the Clippers projected to play. And then I believe for Minnesota as well, the players that are game time decisions, we have them currently projected for minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who's going to be in, who's going to be out. I mean, I can quickly talk through what to do, though. I mean, George and Kawhi are both questionable. Russ is still out. So if
Mhm.
George and Kawhi are out, Harden's maybe the best play on the slate. You'd also want to get to some Norm Powell, some Terrence Mann. And then if one of those guys are out, you could still play Harden with the other. And if they're all in, I think they're fine as GPP plays, but
Yeah.
really nothing to be prioritizing. Then for Minnesota, still no Karl Anthony Towns. Rudy Gobert's questionable. If Gobert's in, he's great. If he's out, you could obviously get to Nas Reed. Both sites priced him up though after a massive
Yeah.
game, so he's not really going to be the priority he has been. Anthony Edwards questionable though, definitely interesting. If he's out, maybe Alexander Walker slides into the starting lineup. He's a decent piece of value. But again, they priced all these guys up. They've kind of made adjustments
Mhm.
for Cat being out, so you're not getting as much upside as you would with this news normally. Kyle Anderson's still questionable too. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, we have to keep an eye on it, but like the things you're going to want to force are probably on the Clipper side.
Yeah.
And that's more so if like George is out, then you're really going to want to get Kawhi and Harden. Like if just Kawhi's out, I like Harden. I'd be a
Yeah.
little bit scared to go to George because he's playing banged up. But yeah, it is a situation to keep an eye on. And the good news is there's so much news in that late game that if you just have 2 or 3 spots there,
You're
you
right.
could kind of create I don't know, 2 pay-ups. Like you could end up with, I don't know, Kawhi and Edwards if he's
Yeah.
in, and then if they're both ruled out, you just kind of go more balanced. So like,
You're
yeah,
right.
just leave a few spots for that late game. I don't have a good hunch as to who's in, who's out, but
Yeah.
things could change quickly there for sure.
I do want to say for Minnesota real quick, like if Kyle Anderson's out, I do think like Walker and McDaniels become a little bit like more in play than really what they're showing right now.
Yeah.
And then Edwards, if he's out, I like Anderson probably the most. So there's kind of a weird kind of if then statement there as well. But yeah, they're probably the most difficult. Like to your point, Clippers, we kind of know exactly what to do. Um,
Yep.
if some players are out. But with that, let's go ahead and jump into the position by position breakdown. So in a weird way, we went through so much news, but we really haven't like given like too much away for the guards or just really in general. So like in terms of payups for the guards tonight, we got SGA, we got Halburn, we got Lillard, we got Fox. So like a bunch of names that we really haven't mentioned. White is the first one that really pops up, and then a little bit of Harden, Fred Van Fleet, Jalen Green a little bit. But like in terms of like OF index, are we paying up for like really any of these guys?
I mean, like I said, I mean, with that news in the late game, it also starts the same time as the Bucks and the
Mm-hmm.
Kings. So, like, you could just go to studs from that game if the news doesn't work out in your favor for the Clippers. So, I don't know. It's tough for me to get to SGA. I do think he's a really good play if you could find the salary for him.
Yeah.
The other pay up I like is Dame, who's been playing really well.
Yeah.
Still priced below 9K. I mean, it seems like he's turned a corner. Obviously, a really streaky player. So we ride the wave when he's hot. He's definitely hot right now. Other than that, I think White's great chalk. Like, definitely get the Derek White. I'm fine with Van Fleet. Um, but
You
yeah,
just
it's mostly going to be the mid range.
you see the news on Lillard with like the Bucks and just like the former head coach and that
I don't. I
where
saw him like. I probably know what you're talking about now.
well there's like a little blurb that I saw that basically they weren't running like the sets and stuff that made him very successful in Portland. They just did not install that at all for the Bucks, and like that's like the first thing Doc did. And so since the All-Star break, I think we are seeing him do better because they have been well playing to his strengths more. And so
Yeah, that
I
makes
think we're
sense.
getting him too cheap, honestly, if that's the case.
Yeah, man, I like him a lot. And like I said, it's tough to get all the way up to SGA, but Dame,
Yeah.
I mean, sub 9K. It's like you almost can't even call him a pay up. Like, love
Yeah.
the price on him here.
And that's the thing about tonight's slate. We just have a lot of kind of softer price plays in general in terms of value as well. So, like value wise, to your point, Derek White's someone we're getting to. We mentioned Dylan Brooks already enough. Sam Hauser we kind of mentioned as well, but I'm surprised by Beasley popping up. Drew Holiday seems fine. Anyone here that's popping up that we maybe didn't touch on enough that you like in terms of DraftKings value or FanDuel value for that matter?
Well, I will say I saw someone in chat bring it up. I can't remember who early
Mhm.
on, but Pritchard is a
Oh
decent
yeah, yeah,
GPP pivot tonight. I mean, he had a pretty good game last night, and yeah, he's already in the rotation. And whenever the Celtics blow a team out, he still plays the fourth quarter. I'm not expecting a blowout in Utah tonight by any stretch. Both of their main point guards are healthy, but maybe he gets a little bit extra run here. So I don't mind that as a tournament play. But yeah, other than Dame, I mean, Drew's probably lower owned than he should be, especially
Mhm.
on DK compared to some of the other Celtics guys. Not loving the Beasley ownership at 10% on DK. I don't think I get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think most of the chalk is warranted at guard tonight, other than maybe Dylan Brooks.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think we're just probably eating the chalk. I will say I don't mind that the pitcher like potential pivot from Sam Hauser chalk. Like we have seen that typically speaking, it's one or the other having a
Right.
good game, and so I don't mind that. But yeah, I think we're just eating the chalk there at guard. So with that, let's get into some forwards, and then we'll jump back into some questions here. So looking at the forwards, I feel like we know what we're trying to do forward wise tonight. We're trying to pay up for Giannis or Tatum. Now the field's getting to a lot more of Tatum, but the data, the model really likes Giannis a lot more in terms of OF index. Now Tatum's a slightly better value. Where are you at with those two? Are you going more of Giannis or more of Tatum?
I think more Tatum. I like Giannis, but I mean, I don't know. The price difference is just massive here.
Yeah.
Like you said, I mean, the OF index score does favor Giannis, no surprise there, but the value score is more than a point higher. So
Mhm.
the difference in value is actually wider than the difference in OF index on that one. So I don't know. That's telling me to play Tatum here. The other thing, though, is like if you are building on FanDuel, especially where you're limited to four Celtics. Like if you go Cornette, Hauser, White, Holiday, it's probably smart to pay up for Giannis and get
Yeah.
that leverage getting away from Tatum. Um, but there's different ways to do that. I did want to bring up too. I know we're moving on from guards now,
Yeah.
but if you have Damon and we get news that say George and Kawhi are out, you could pivot to Harden.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of pivots in those late games if you're using your payups there.
Dude,
And I mean
I
the
don't want
Celtics
that.
game's at 9, so it's close. But yeah, I know you don't. You got dad duty, but
Well,
man,
no, yes, but that's just like
it's
I
a
don't know,
pain, dude.
Dame or Harden though. Like just with how well Dame's been playing, it's just like you would have to go Harden, but like I wouldn't exactly want to,
That's
like
fair. Yeah,
uh
man. I mean, if both those guys are out, you'd have to think he takes over. But like,
yes.
but yeah, and the other thing too is as much as I like Dame, like if I'm going to be heavy on Dame, I probably don't want to be heavy on Giannis too. I mean, they could both have a big game here, but I don't know. But yeah, Tatum for me is probably going to be my
Yeah.
highest on forward, and that's not exactly a hot take.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair, but I think the point we're really trying to make is you want one of those two probably in your builds, especially if you're paying up. We have enough value that you can fit them in, and you don't even really have to go below 4K to fit those two in because I mean, you could argue they're both too cheap,
Yeah,
with the slate. So from there, obviously, we got Kawhi. Got to figure out what's going to happen there. Paul George got to figure out what's going to happen there. Jalen Green, small forward on DraftKings. That's always interesting. Anyone else that's popping up, and we kind of mentioned Washington, Kyle Kuzma, Denny. We like those plays. We kind of mentioned Utah. John Collins is all right. Laravia for Memphis is kind of a GPP play. Um, any guys that are worth kind of mentioning again. Like I don't hate Corey Kispert, but he is kind of starting to get pretty chalky. So I don't know anyone that you think is worth kind of re-mentioning.
yeah, Kispert's fine if he starts, but I know we already talked about this early, but
Yeah.
I really love the Wizards here. So, like, after Tatum, or if you can't get up to Giannis, I think it's Kuzma pretty aggressively. Denny not too far behind him. Those are two of
Mhm.
my favorite forward plays tonight. You brought up Laravia. I mean, the ownership really not climbing on him at all. I think he's a fine play here. I'm definitely going to want to get to some of that. I will say, be careful with the New York guys. It looks like they're still drawing some ownership. Hart and DiVincenzo. Obviously, they have upside, but OG's back tonight, which is definitely going to cut into that.
Yeah.
Jalen's healthy too, so it's been a while since they've been this healthy. I know Randall's still out, but not crazy about anything in that first game, really.
Yeah.
And then Collins, I think, is maybe my favorite run back if I'm super heavy on Boston. Sub 5% on DK, only 5% over on FanDuel. I know he's up over 7K, but John Collins just looks too low on to me. And I really like the correlation if that Boston game does stay close.
Yeah, and with John Collins, we kind of know the thing with him. It's like for a while, it's like the minutes just not being there for him, kind of randomly with Utah doing some random stuff. But lately, I mean, for the past like what month and a half, they happen there. He's coming in low owned on every single slate. It seems like, especially tonight with Markkinen and Hendricks out. Like Hendricks is someone that was getting random minutes. I do think that like means even in a blowout, like we have seen, like these last few games, there have been blowouts, and he's still getting 32 minutes. So I mean, with Horford and Porzingis out as well, I think that's something we got to mention. Like, it is shocking that he's that low owned.
Yeah.
Um, like I don't know, maybe 10% like would be acceptable to me.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy. I don't get it.
Yeah,
I mean, as much as we like the guards for Utah, like they kind of rotate on who does well.
yeah,
Like tonight, I mean, usually two of the three go off and one has a bad game. You don't have to deal with that game of roulette when you're playing the
yeah,
front court. I mean, Collins is getting most of the minutes. Kessler kind of inconsistent. So I really
yeah.
just like playing John Collins a lot if I'm playing something from Utah.
So let's jump back into some of the questions here. Let me try to see what else we got. So we got a question about Zubac. Any love for him? I mean, we know again with the Clippers, I guess we don't know what's going to happen with them, but like he might get a slight bump if like a couple of those guys are listed out. But I don't know. Is he someone you're getting to tonight if they're active?
On DK, yes, because you can play two centers. I think
Mhm.
5,300, there's enough meat on that bone. Get over 30 fantasy points, feel pretty good about it. On FanDuel, I probably wouldn't. He's 6K, and you're using most of that center spot for Cornet. So, yes on DK, no on FanDuel, in
Mhm.
short.
Let's just get back into this question. So we kind of already mentioned this, but and this is old 12 minutes ago, but I want to answer it. So if PG is out, do we bump Harden and Powell? So both of them together, I mean, we're perfectly fine doing that, right? Like both of them, not just
Yeah.
one or the other. Okay.
Yeah, you can play both. I mean, Terrence Mann would also join that group. And I do want to bring this up. This is a reach a little bit. But
Mhm.
if Kawhi's out, we see Amir Coffey slide into the starting lineup at times.
Yeah.
He's actually had huge games this season when he is like a last minute starter, and no one in the field ever gets to him. So, something to keep an eye on. If we get maybe both or one of those guys out, and Coffey is the starter over Powell, don't be afraid to maybe mix in Coffey. Not a super talented player by any stretch, but I've gotten it wrong enough times now chasing Powell in those
Mhm.
situations that I know how good Coffee's kind of been in them. So
Yeah.
if Coffee's starting, maybe kind of split your ownership or maybe just get away from the situation. But I don't mind Amir Coffee if one or two of those guys are ruled out.
Yeah. So we did kind of touch on this one as well. So right now he is not worth a flyer is kind of the conclusion that we came to with Jordan Goodwin expected to play. Jordan Goodwin expected to get 23 minutes. Luke Kennard also projected to get 27 minutes. So like what does that mean for him? It's
Yeah,
probably too thin.
yeah, he's priced up too. Like if he was still mid price, I'd say take a shot. But I don't know, around 5K, you need him to almost duplicate that game he just had, and there's just better value elsewhere, I think.
So okay, this is interesting. So you already mentioned you like Thompson, but he also likes Giddy here. So we haven't touched on Giddy. Thompson, you like as price tag. I don't feel like we really need to touch on that. We're good with that play. But what about Giddy?
Giddy's interesting. I'm just taking a look at the minutes. I mean, the
Yeah,
minutes have been all over the place. I think he's okay as a tournament play.
yeah,
Don't like the FanDuel price at
yeah.
6,600 on DK, where he's 1K cheaper. As like a last piece in, I think he has just enough upside. Can't say I'm excited to play him though.
It's a somewhat cheaper way to get some exposure to that game though. So I kind of get
Yeah,
going with it. So, but to your point, like the minutes have been all over the place. Maybe he does get us 27 minutes tonight and really smashes. So I don't mind it.
yeah.
Honestly, I think that's a good GPP play. He's not getting too much ownership on DraftKings. So let's see here. So yeah, we got Unicorn Love. What do you think about Luke Cornett on FanDuel specifically? So on DraftKings, he does feel like we kind of have to play him because obviously we can play two centers. On FanDuel, I do think it's a little bit more of a question. So I do like this. So I guess if we're not playing Luke Cornett, who are you playing? But what are your thoughts on Luke Cornett FanDuel wise?
As long as he starts, I think he's great. I mean, he's shown he's going to do a lot when he has the minutes. And yeah, I mean, center's kind of tricky tonight. I don't know. I like him a lot. I would
Yeah.
say he's probably one of the safer pieces of chalk, honestly, even though you are using up that center spot.
Okay. And then this is kind of a fascinating one. Jordan Poole or Tyus Jones? It's funny. At the start of the season, you probably would have just been like, that's a crazy question. You're going Jordan Poole. During any stretch of the season prior to like this last week or so, you would have said Tyus Jones easy. But we have seen Jordan Poole play better recently, and it is a question to be asked. So I don't really know. Honestly, like Tyus Jones is chalk, Jordan Poole, not too high owned, but Jordan Poole's been going off. He's a little bit higher priced. I feel like this is truly a toss up. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, I think the way you handle it is you say Jones is probably the higher floor, Poole probably is the higher ceiling. I mean, it depends on your risk tolerance. Like, if you're playing a large field tournament, I'd probably go with Poole. Like, it's rare we see a major spike in Tyus Jones's upside. I mean, he has gotten to 50 fantasy points at times, but I
Yeah,
think Poole has that more so in his bag, as weird as that sounds to say. Is technically a revenge game for Jones here, but I don't think he's missing
yeah,
Memphis all that
yeah.
much. So I don't know. You can go either way. I think Poole has the higher ceiling. Jones probably safer between the two, though.
Mhm. Any 3K punts? So, man, I have to go back. There was one earlier in the video that I mentioned that I didn't mind as a punt. I can't remember the name now. Oh, that's gonna bother me.
3K.
I mean, we can sort by the data real quick. I forget who it was. He's like 3.3. I can tell you that much. I'm gonna go just see that price.
Brissett.
Yeah, yeah, it was Brissett. Yeah, so I don't hate him, but he's not someone that we would need to play. Um,
Yeah. I mean, Jay Crowder's sub 4K. I don't love it.
yeah,
Um, I mean, there's a lot to like in the 4K range with guys like
yeah,
Cornett and Hauser and Kispert, even maybe Jeff Green, who's sub 4K on FanDuel. I guess Green on FanDuel would be one, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean,
That's
eh.
actually that's actually a question that we got so as well. So let's kind of get into Jeff Green as well. So yeah, honestly, that's Andy. That's probably a question where maybe try to rebuild if you can. You're probably asking that question because you like your lineup, but probably try to rebuild. But Jeff Green is definitely an interesting play, I would say. And you said more specifically on um,
FanDuel.
FanDuel. He is kind of chalk on FanDuel, but he is someone that minutes wise does get more minutes with Sangoon off the court. What are your kind of expectations for him? Because I could see him having a really good game. I could also see him very much being a dud.
Yeah, I think the easy way to go about it is just play him if he starts, if you like him, and then like you don't have to force him if he's
Right.
starting, but if he's coming off the bench, I'd proceed with some caution. I mean, they don't need to necessarily get him minutes. I mean, Bullock's healthy now, Tate's a little bit healthier. than earlier in the
Mm,
season where
yeah.
Sengun missed a few games. So I like him if he starts, but if he doesn't, maybe try to do something else. But it really just matters. Make your decision based on the lineup.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So with that, let's kind of get into center plays. I feel like we already touched on all the center plays that we really want to be on regardless, but let's kind of touch on it. So Luke Cornett is chalk on both sides. Then kind of the next chalk play, Kyle Kuzma, you can play as power forward on DraftKings as well, and then just shooting or small forward on FanDuel. Walker Kessler kind of chalky. Don't really like him. I mean, really, the only other center play that I really want to get to is Gobert if he plays, and then for me, Wemby on DraftKings. I just like that low ownership. I think the risk is worth the reward there. And then a little bit of John Collins, but he's power forward eligible. So do you see anyone else that you really like that you're like, yeah, we kind of need to play that guy, or where are you at?
Need is probably a strong word. I don't think
Yeah.
there's anyone we necessarily need
Yeah.
to play. I do like Cornelius Chalk. I think he's good, but we've talked plenty about him.
Yeah.
Holmgren, I actually like a lot in tournaments, sub 10%. Paced up against Indiana. Indiana's defense hasn't been that great. We did just see that Jalen Williams was ruled out for OKC, so that should
Okay.
only help Chet. So Chet's probably my favorite tournament center here. Obviously, if Gobert's in, still no cat, he'd be appealing. Um, but I don't know. I think I prefer Chet between the two. I guess it's close. But
Yeah.
those two do stand out. And I'll say, yeah, if you're building for Sabonis, it does give you flexibility as we wait for news in those late games. But Cornette's going to be my center in most lineups tonight. I'll mix in some Chet and
Mhm.
Rudy. Yeah, we did talk about Zubac on DK.
Yeah.
I think is good. When he get there on FanDuel. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then yeah, if
Mhm.
Rudy's out, Nas Reed, but
Yeah.
that's obvious if Rudy's
Yeah.
out.
And it's kind of straightforward there. Again, with the weird
It
multiple
is
position
weird, yeah.
eligibilities that we have, it's always the toughest position to break down, especially like lately. So with that, let's see if we have any more questions. Then we'll get into, um, yeah. So we'll talk about Houston. So that's and then we'll get into a first look build. So not Houston, OKC. So OKC wise, Jalen Williams is out, so we got that comment. And then we got Carson Walls. Looks like a good play. So yeah, so with Jalen Williams out, what are we trying to do here? Is there anyone we want to get to? Is Gordon Hayward going to randomly get minutes? Is Isaiah Joe going to get more minutes? Wiggins, like, is there anyone? Carson Wallace, is he going to get more minutes? Is Josh Giddey? Are we expecting a big spike in minutes for anyone here, or is it just kind of they all get spread out amongst all of them?
It's tricky. I think they all kind of get spread out, especially because Giddy and Dort aren't always getting as many minutes as the other
Mm-hmm.
starters. I think those are two guys that are going to see a little bit of extra run here. So yeah, whoever brought up Giddy before, he does look even better now, but
Mm-hmm.
still, I mean, there's some risk in his minutes. Dort, okay. I mean, even when he starts, he's not a guy who sees a high usage rate. He's very similar to Dylan Brooks, honestly. And then Cason Wallace, if he starts, I do like him as value. Um, Probably doesn't get the ownership he deserves if he does slide into the starting
Mm-hmm.
lineup. So he's actually someone I do like. Can't say he's 100% safe here, but I do like the matchup. I like the DK price. FanDuel's fine as well. You get eligibility at both guard positions. So again, I know it's a bit of a cop out, but once we get the lineup, it's much easier to
Yes.
kind of make
Yes.
these calls, especially with the Thunder. They have a deep bench, but it's not like there's one guy who seems to emerge in these situations. Like I could list off Joe, Wiggins, I guess Hayward. I mean, we haven't seen it from him yet there,
Yeah.
but these are all guys we'll probably see a few extra minutes. It's not like it's all going to just funnel into one player. I will say though, this does help Chet, and this probably makes SGA's upside even a little bit higher here.
Yeah.
So those two look great. If Wallace starts, I'd probably get there. Otherwise, I mean, you could mix in some of the value, but no
Yeah.
major priorities.
Yeah. It's funny the 3K question now becomes much a little bit easier to answer. It's like Wallace or Joe, you're kind of looking at or Wiggins to that matter. But yeah, to your point, I really think this is a spot where it could be worthwhile to wait to see the starting lineup and even more so the minutes,
Yeah.
because if we get I don't know, let's say Hayward for 25 minutes, that's significantly more than he was projected to get. Or same thing for like Joe. Like those are two players that we know can be productive with some minutes, but Keldon Johnson just ruled out as well. So does that make Zach Collins more in play? Are we just looking at Jeremy Sohan? I don't know. Does that change anything for you?
I mean, Johnson already comes off the bench and he plays inconsistent minutes, so it's tough for me to say again that there's one guy who's going to massively benefit here.
Mm-hmm.
Makes Collins a little bit safer, but at center, I'm still not rushing to get to him. He's probably the biggest uh, boost in terms of upside, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Branham probably gets a little more run. We've seen Wesley more involved in the
Mhm.
rotation. Julian Champagne's going to start. Don't love him. So yeah, again, a tough situation to really capitalize on. I like Vassell a little bit more. Wemby too. Sochan, I really like at his price, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not like that's changing anything dramatically for me,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, Swear Baby agreeing with you about SGA being a better play there. So like that. And then, yeah, we already talked about Larivia. We kind of think he's a good GPP play, probably a little bit underowned
Yep.
compared to how he's been playing and really how he's looked on paper. But with that, let's go and get into a first look build. So I think we pretty much agree that we're just eating the chalk on Luke Cornett. And then also probably trying to get to at least one or two or three more Boston Celtics players. So is it Tatum? Is it, I mean, it's White. I think we're playing him, but is it Tatum? Is it Hauser? Is it Drew Holiday?
Um, if I'm only playing three, I'd probably go Hauser next, but I wouldn't mind going Hauser and Tatum.
Okay, let's do it. No, that's
Yeah,
fine.
I think he played for Boston. And then maybe we run it back with Collins, who we talked about earlier too.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think that's pretty darn solid for a start. So, um, wait, can we can play Hauser at shooting guards? Let me just try to make this as optimal as possible for a first look build. So, White point guard, Hauser shooting guard, and then we can go Collins and Tatum all in this as well. So,
Nice.
I mean, it does work out pretty well there. That's nice. I will say, I know we didn't touch on him too much. I do think Keontae George as price tag is just too cheap. So if you wanted another run back, like just say you didn't like
Yeah.
the 4-1 and you want to go 4-2, I don't know. I just think he's a cheaper option. Jordan Clarkson's still right there as well. Sense and balls there as well. So like if someone wanted another option, they could. But we have 5.9 left over here. Guard, forward, and utility. Where do you next want to go? I mean, that's a lot of salary left over.
I mean, we both like Jabari Smith in his ownership for
Yeah.
Houston with Sengun. I think that's really sneaky. I'd probably do that. And then maybe Denny, and then we're going to be left with like 5K or less, I think.
Yeah. So let's do that.
I mean, if we could fit Kuzma, I'd
I
love
do
it,
want
but
to fit Kuzma, but yeah, that's
that's probably more realistic. Yeah.
would we rather Kuzma more than Collins to you?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do that. And at least with 3.5, let's do a quick refresh here to see if any of the OKC players are popping or Spurs are popping now. I'm just kind of curious because I think that could be the spot that we go to. Not exactly just yet, but yeah,
If
it's
Kaysen
probably
Wallace starts,
yeah,
then he would be one.
yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, for a first look build, I feel like this is pretty good. Obviously, we have a little bit more time.
Yeah,
If
I'd
you
go
go,
Wallace. Yeah, that's a good build.
I think that's pretty solid. I mean, we're getting a lot of chalk, but also getting unique enough there.
Absolutely.
So, final thoughts here. I don't think we have any more questions. So, yeah, what are your final thoughts? And you want to kind of just give a tease for the Discord as well?
Yeah, definitely check out the Discord. Let's see who's in there tonight. We got Jayhawk going live at 7 Eastern. Going to talk you up to the slate. If there's anything we missed or any news that breaks, he'll definitely help you guys parse through that. Last thoughts. Honestly, I'm playing a handful of lineups tonight. I'm probably just going to skip the 7:30 Eastern game. There's nothing there I feel like I need, and we're waiting on news in the 8 o'clock spot. I want to see that OKC lineup. Maybe we get more news from the late game. So not something I'm normally recommending you do. And if you're MMEing, probably don't do this. But for me, I play like 5 to 10 single entry type lineups. I'm probably just gonna wait until 8 Eastern to start my slate tonight. So if you want to join me on that train, welcome aboard.
No, I that kind of echoes the point I kind of want to make is I feel like we have just bigger edges later on in the season, and that's kind of an example as to how we have a little bit more of an edge. I think later on the season because not everyone knows how to respond to the news at this point in the season. So I think that's a great point. Just be ready to be a little bit more unique if you need to. I like that call a lot. But that's going to do it, everyone. Again, jump in the Discord chat. It's going to be going live about 24 minutes. Link to that's in the description below.
Take care, everyone.